And we are grateful and thankful to Allah that we have the access to the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is the same group as the Prophet ﷺ informed us in the hadith about the 73 sects, when he said that those who identify as Muslim will split up into 73 groups. All of them will be in hellfire except for one. And he said the congregation, the vast majority, and those who have the creed of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. So those narrations put together, they tell us that throughout all history and all time, the people who are on the creed of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, they are the majority. And so one example of that is that the majority of those who claim to be Muslim, they say that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is the first rightful caliph. And a small minority among those who claim to be Muslim, they say that Imam Ali should have been the first caliph. So we see by that those people are misguided because they are not upon the creed of the majority. Continuing on with our book, the explanation of the Matn Abī Shujaa, which is a beginner's book in the Islamic law according to the infrastructure of Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu. It is a very popular book. Anyone who formally studies the Islamic knowledge in the Shafi'i school, most likely this will be among the first books that he learns. And alhamdulillah, we're able to have a reliable and accurate English translation that is easy to understand. So far in this book, we read from the beginning the chapter of the purification and prayers, because that is the most important. Because the most important good deed after being Muslim is to do the obligatory prayer. So after we did purification and prayer and what is related to those chapters, we went over the chapter of fasting because of the approach of Ramadan. And so we mentioned the details regarding fasting. And so once we finished that, we promised that we would skip ahead in the book to the chapters that are seldom heard, or that people seldom are able to learn them. So we decided to start with, and we skipped zakat, and we skipped the transaction, and we skipped hajj, and we went straight to the religious punishments, the chapter of assaults. So this chapter begins with talking about killing and the judgments related to killing. We mentioned two types of killing, or we explained one type of killing. Killing is of three types: to kill in a deliberate way, which we'll call purely intentional; to kill by mistake, which we'll call purely accidental; and to kill by mistake in a deliberate way, which we'll call mistakenly intentional. So we covered the purely intentional killing, and we mentioned that a retribution is due for this type of killing. And we explained that the heirs of the victim, if they unanimously agree that they want to enact the eye for an eye rule, the retribution, then that killer would be executed either by the heirs themselves. They choose someone amongst themselves to carry it out, or they delegate that to the Muslim ruler. They tell the Muslim ruler, take our right for us. We also mentioned killing by mistake, the purely unintentional, the purely accidental. We said that there's no retribution due for this, but it does require an indemnity, diya, which you can call blood money. And so we defined this as when the person had no intention whatsoever of killing the other person. Like for example, if someone slips and falls on another person and this other person dies, mashallah, When you study these chapters, you see the perfection and the completeness of the Islamic law. And is that a far-fetched scenario? Maybe it doesn't happen every day, but it could happen that someone slips and falls on top of another person, and then they kill that person as a result of that accident. So what's the judgment? What is the right of the heirs? What is upon the one who slipped and fell? Is anything upon him? Who is the one who decides that, who judges? Such matters are not left up to the flawed perspectives of fallible humans. Rather, the just and moral standard, or the true standard, is what God revealed. So in this case, the person obviously is not sinful because it was purely unintentional, it was a mistake, it was purely an accident. However, he does have to pay. No. There's another example, they give other examples too. Like if a person was hunting and he threw his spear or shot his arrow towards the gazelle, but the spear or arrow landed on a person instead and killed that person. So the same judgment applies here. He's not sinful, but he has to pay the diya. No, so that was a quick recap of the last class. Now we reach to page 451. For those who have the hard copy, top of the page. The author said, as for the mistakenly intentional, this is known in Arabic as shibhu khata. So this is the third type of killing. We mentioned the first two, which are opposite ends of the spectrum, the purely intentional, the purely accidental. Now this one is half and half, mistakenly intentional. This is called shibhu khata. And literally it means like a mistake, similar to a mistake. So as for the mistakenly intentional killing, the instrument used usually is not lethal, but in rare cases it might be lethal and can be attributed to the killing. For example, if someone wrote on another person's hand and the person died, the writing on one's hand with an ink pen cannot be attributed to the killing, not even in rare cases. However, if someone used a light stick of a whip to hit someone and that person died from that hit, then there is a diya, or there is an indemnity. The killing by shibh khata entails a diya, but there is no qisas associated with it. Qisas is the eye for an eye retribution rule, meaning that the person is not killed for killing the other one. And the only time when that is enacted is when it's purely intentional. What some people refer to as first degree murder is when the victim is targeted by the murderer, by the perpetrator, with something that usually kills. So his intention, the intention of the killer is not looked at. He can't shoot someone with a gun and say, I didn't need to kill him. The gun is usually lethal, and they intended at least to shoot them. So they targeted them, and they shot them, and then a person died. This is purely intentional. And that's what would require the retribution. The shibh khata is when someone intends to prick someone, for example, with a needle on the forearm, and this instrument, the needle, happened to kill the other one. This is considered shibh khata because his action had an intention and he was using an instrument that normally does not kill as used, nor does this instrument kill most of the time, like poking the needle on this person's forearm on a location on the body that is not deadly. Could be that there might be a typo in this sentence, but the point is, the pricking of the needle on the forearm is not something that usually kills the person. So if as a result of its use and his action, the person died, this is called shibh khata, mistakenly intentional. The diya, indemnity for killing by shibh khata, is 100 camels if the killed was a male free Muslim and half of that for the female free Muslim, 50 camels. Now, the Islam haters and those that they are misguided and they have evil and corruption in their hearts and they want to criticize Islam, they try to use these types of judgments to claim that Islam gives the woman a lesser value. But in reality, this is not related to the value of the Muslim woman, because just by being Muslim, the person, he has that high value, regardless of whether they're male and female. And the female Muslim, she doesn't get any less reward for the good deeds that she does. The truth of the matter is that there's judgments that are specific to males and judgments that are specific to females. But in terms of how they are judged, or in their judgment according to Allah, and the Muslim, he has that value. So the wisdom behind the woman, if she gets killed, that the killer would pay half, instead of paying 100 camels, he would pay 50, is that usually the man is the one who is the provider of his family, the one who is relied upon for support. So that man dying then now disrupts the financial situation of a family in a bigger way than the woman. Because usually the woman, she's not responsible for the financial support of the family. And she can contribute, and she does often contribute to the family in different ways, but her main, it's not her obligation to support her husband. It's not her obligation to support her children. That's the obligation of the men. So that's why it's 50. That's why it's half. The characteristics of the diya, indemnity, vary depending on the type of killing. So for example, if someone killed one of his mahram relatives, this is more severe than one who is not a mahram. In the case of the killing by shibhu khata, mistakenly intentional, which is also referred to as shibh amd, same thing, mistakenly intentional, the diya is on the aqila to pay 100 camels in 3 groups, and it can be deferred for 3 years. They pay the diya within 3 years. At the end of the first year, they pay 1/3 of the amount, and at the end of the second year, they pay 1/3, and at the end of the third year, they pay the remaining third. And who are the aqila? They are the male relatives of the killer. The male relatives of the killer. These are the aqila. And in English, they're referred to as the agnates, excluding the son and the father. So besides the son and the father, these are the aqila. And so we see that the payment is deferred for 3 years. It doesn't have to be paid all up front. It can be paid all up front, but they don't have to, not obligated to pay it all at once. They pay 1/3 each year. And to the heirs of the victim. We did try to do some research about what is the dollar amount of these 100 camels. We said that it's in 3 groups. That means the camels would have different characteristics. Some of them would be she camels that are at a certain age, etc. These vary in price. I did not find specific dollar amounts for these. For example, 2-year-old female camel, 2-year-old male camel, 3-year-old female camel, 4-year-old female camel. But I did find just in general some prices for camels. They start from like 5,000 and up. The author said, the author mentioned 4 conditions for the qisas to be obligatory, for the retribution, for the killer to be sane. So there is no qisas retribution on the one who committed the assault while being insane. So in the case of if someone was insane and they killed someone, obviously purely intentional, they don't get executed for that. However, if the killer was sane when he committed the assault and then later he became insane, in this case the qisas retribution is still applied on him, because he was sane when he committed the assault. That's clear. The person who loses his mind by knowingly and purposely drinking alcohol, muta'addi, is called muta'addi in the Islamic law, and becomes intoxicated, and while in that situation in which he does not know what he is doing, he commits an assault. In this case, the qisas retribution applies. He is treated as an accountable person. This excludes the muta'addi if he commits an assault. The non-muta'addi, this excludes the non-muta'addi. If he commits an assault, the qisas is not applied to him. And so the jurists, they say it is to be harsh on him. Because the one who is muta'addi, it means that he knew what he was consuming, that it's intoxicating, and so the resulting insanity or him losing his mind or blacking out, as they say, and then him committing these crimes or these murders or whatever, that doesn't save him from the consequence of being executed, because he, on purpose, he ingested that substance and he made himself that way. As for the non-muta'addi, like someone who he saw a cup on the coffee table and he just thought it was water and he drank it, and it happened to be some psychedelic mix and he lost his mind and he went and murdered people, he would not be executed for that because he didn't know what he was drinking. The second condition for the qisas retribution to be applied is to be pubescent. Hence, there is no qisas retribution on the child, whether male or female. But this does not mean that there is no diyah to be paid from their money. And so they still have to pay the blood money. The child is responsible for the daman of what they destroyed. The daman means the paying the value or replacing what was destroyed. And so in general, let's say you have a child, even if they're not mumayyiz, even if they're prepubescent, they destroy something, right? They destroy a building when for example, they took your phone and they threw it in the water and it destroyed, or they took your laptop and they spilled some liquid on it. That destruction of that property, even though the child does not get a sin, but when the child becomes accountable, then they have to pay. So it remains on their accounts, or it remains on them until they become pubescent. The parent is not obligated to pay any of that. The parent does not have to cover that. But usually the parent does. And usually, if your child, they destroy something for someone, usually the parent pays it for them, but they don't have to. So the person who their stuff was destroyed, they can't come after the parent and say, hey, you pay for my stuff. So if the child has money, like let's say, some children, they inherit money, so they have money from when they're born. So if they have money that's theirs, and the parent, since he is the executor of the child's money, he's the wali of the money, then he can pay it from the child's money because the child has to pay. The father of the child cannot be forced to compensate for what their child destroys. If the child says that he is a child, he is believed without needing to swear to that. The swearing is accepted from the pubescent person in matters of judgments, and it is not accepted from the non-pubescent. just a little detail about how do we determine if it's a child. A child meaning prepubescent, so they could be, let's say, 13. And if they say, for example, I haven't seen my mani yet, if she says I haven't gotten my period yet, and she swears to that, and she says wallahi, then in the court of Islamic law, they take her word for it. And this is for what? We're talking about the conditions for retribution. So if a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, they went and they killed someone, and purely intentional, they shot them, purely intentional, targeting them, they don't get executed for that, but they still have to pay. And so the parent would not be forced to pay. The child would be on him, and if he has money, the wali of the money pays from his money, or the parent can pay for him. Number 3, for the killer not to be a parent of the murdered person. If the killer is the parent of the killed one, there is no qisas retribution, neither for the father nor the mother who kills their son or daughter or their offspring, grandchildren. However, there is a qisas retribution if the son or daughter killed their father or mother. So if the son kills his father, the son will be killed for that. Yani, among the judgments that show the status of the Muslim parents is that if a Muslim parent kills their son or daughter, of course it's haram. It's not permissible for a parent to kill their child. It's not permissible. It's just that if a Muslim parent killed their Muslim child, they will not be executed for that. They won't be killed for that. But the opposite is not true. If the Muslim child, if they kill their Muslim parent, they would be executed for that. Yeah, if they killed them intentionally. Number 4, for the murdered one not to be lower than the murderer because of blasphemy or slavery. A Muslim is not killed for killing a kafir, whether this kafir is a dhimmi or a kafir harbi, or a kafir who has a treaty with the Muslims, mu'ahad. Also, a free person is not killed for killing a slave. This does not mean that it is permissible. So again, in terms of sin versus permissible, it's not permissible for a Muslim to kill any Muslim. And it's not permissible for a Muslim to kill a kafir that is a dhimmi. Because the dhimmi has certain protection. The dhimmi is the subject of the Islamic government, basically a non-Muslim who has willingly opted to live under the rulership of the Islamic government, and so he has certain rights as a non-Muslim citizen. And among those rights is that he would not be killed or assaulted or harassed. For the kafir harbi, in certain cases, for sure, it's not sinful. And for the kafir that has a treaty with the Muslims, mu'ahad, this is also related to the Islamic government, and neither of those two, the dhimmi or the mu'ahad, exist now. So what it means is, if a Muslim kills a kafir, and it happens to be sinful, then that Muslim, he won't be executed for killing that kafir. He won't get the death penalty. Same thing if a Muslim kills a slave, he won't get the death penalty for that. But we're not saying, just by saying that doesn't mean that it's permissible. These aforementioned conditions of qisas, retribution, not only apply to the killing, but they also apply to cutting off organs, wounding, gouging, breaking bones, or causing one to become blind, deaf, or unable to smell or speak. So if an insane person kills a Muslim, he is not killed. And if a pubescent child kills someone, he is not killed. Well, that's weird. That's a typo. If the prepubescent child kills someone, he is not killed. And likewise, if the insane person cuts the hand of a Muslim, his hand is not cut off. And if the non-pubescent child cuts the ear of a Muslim, the child's ear is not cut off. So in two spots, they have this typo. It It should be non-pubescent or prepubescent. If the parent cuts off the hand of his son, the parent's hand is not cut off. Likewise, the hand of the Muslim is not cut off if he cut off the hand of a kafir, and the free Muslim's hand is not cut off if he cut off the hand of a slave. So these conditions for qisas, retribution, usually what we know about qisas, retribution is the death penalty. But qisas, retribution is a category that contains different cases besides execution. And it's going to mention all the details now, and they are coming up. And then for the cutting off of appendages, for wounding, for gouging, for making someone lose one of their senses. It's very detailed, mashallah. The other said, a group is executed for the murder of one. For example, if 3 people participated in killing one person, then their qisas is for the 3 of them to be killed again. So 3 people, they cooperated, participated in killing one person, then all 3 of them, if they meet the conditions, they would be executed. For every 2 individuals to whom retribution qisas applies for killing, retribution qisas is due between them for dismembering. So any time that a person would be executed for murdering someone, then the same judgment would apply, the retribution qisas would apply for dismembering. This means when the rules of reciprocating punishment are applicable between 2 individuals, they also apply to the non-fatal personal injuries, such as when a hand or an ear is severed, or if one intentionally causes another to lose their hearing, sight, smell, or taste. These senses can be specifically eliminated by specialists who have experience and know how to eliminate these senses without damaging any other organs. So even, mashallah, imagine if there was an Islamic infrastructure, there was a Muslim government, there would be someone from the Muslim government that they specialize in making someone lose their hearing, for example, without harming any other sense, or without causing harm to any other part of their body. They know how to eliminate one's vision without infringing on any other organ and without committing any transgression on any other part of the body. In the process of qisas, retribution, one is not permitted to transgress beyond the reciprocal punishment. If the victim's foot was cut off, the aggressor's foot is cut off. If the victim's arm is cut off, the aggressor's arm is cut off. And if the victim's hearing is lost, the aggressor's hearing will become lost. In addition to the previously mentioned 4 conditions, there are 2 conditions for qisas, retribution, for cutting off appendages. So now we're going to mention the conditions that would constitute for someone for what we call an eye for an eye. Sharing the specific name and location of the severed part. Hence, it is not any hand of the other, rather it is the right hand with corresponding right hand. So the right hand for the right hand. The right for the right, the left for the left, the upper for the upper, and the lower for the lower. So one cannot take an eye for an ear, a right side for the left side, or a left side for the right side, or a lower part for the upper part. That's condition 1, sharing the specific name and location. Condition 2, one does not cut off the healthy organ of the aggressor for cutting off the paralyzed organ of the victim. However, one does cut off the paralyzed organ of the aggressor for cutting off the healthy organ of the victim. So, let's say the aggressor had a healthy organ and he cut off the paralyzed organ of the victim, he doesn't get his healthy organ cut off. But if the aggressor had a paralyzed organ and he cut off the healthy organ of a victim, his would get cut off. A sound hand or foot is not cut off for a paralyzed hand or foot. For example, if the aggressor has a healthy hand and the victim has a paralyzed hand, and the aggressor cut off the paralyzed hand of the victim, in this case, one does not cut off the healthy hand of the aggressor, because one would be taking away from the aggressor more than what was taken from the victim. So we see the legal reasoning in this case is because he would be taking more, and that's not equal. That's not an eye for an eye. The healthy leg of the aggressor is cut off if the aggressor cut off the limping leg of the victim. The leg that has the limp is functional. This is different from the paralyzed leg, which has no function when standing or walking. The ear of the aggressor is cut off if the aggressor cut off the ear of a deaf person, because the sense of hearing is not done by the ear, it is done by what is beyond the ear. The ear helps to funnel the sounds to reach the senses that hear. And also there's a cosmetic difference as well. So even if you cut off a deaf person's ear, it doesn't mean that they're going to be okay with walking around like without an ear, without listening. Even though the sound or the way that the sound is perceived is from what is beyond the ear. The nose of the aggressor is cut off if the aggressor cut off the nose of a person who cannot smell, because the sense of smell is not done by the nose, it is done by what is beyond the nose. The nose helps to funnel the air which is carrying the smell to reach the senses that smell. This next sentence is, I don't know if there's a topic. Let me just check the air real quick. Sorry about that. So the Arabic says, and so we'll just say, we'll read what's in the book and then we'll just change it a little bit. So he says, the stud performing penis of the aggressor is cut off if the aggressor cut off the penis of a person who was impotent, because impotence is caused by the heart and other factors. The penis itself has the potential to be functional. So I think what he's trying to say is the functional and the penis by which a person can impregnate another. That's what I think he means by the stud performing penis. I don't see something like that in the Arabic. Yeah, in Arabic it says, وَفِي الذَّكَرِ السَّلِيمِ وَلَوْ ذَكَرَ صَغِيرٍ وَشَيْخٍ وَعِنِّينَ دِيًا. Yeah, so basically, we'll just say the sound penis, and the penis that works, we'll just say that. So if the penis of the aggressor, if the penis of the aggressor works, and he cut off the penis of a person who was impotent, he would still have his penis cut off. Because impotence is caused by the heart and other factors, but the penis itself has the potential to be functional. Yeah, so we'll just stick with functional. However, if the aggressor had a paralyzed hand and he cut off the healthy hand of the victim, in this case the paralyzed hand of the aggressor is cut off, unless two trustworthy specialists determine that if the paralyzed organ were to be cut off, the blood that will flow out of the ruptured veins will remain open and not stop from flowing, whether by dipping it in hot oil or by cauterizing it to seal its end. In this case, the paralyzed hand is not cut off. If the victim was not accepting as equitable the loss of his healthy hand for the paralyzed hand of the aggressor, in this case the victim chooses either the qisas, retribution, or the diya, the indemnity, blood money, but he cannot have both. Every organ of the victim that is cut off from the joint by the aggressor can be reciprocated and cut off from the aggressor: wrist, elbow, shoulder, knee, ankle, etc. However, if the victim's arm was broken at the midpoint of the forearm, this cannot be reciprocated on the aggressor, and because there's no way to make it the same, because it's all about reciprocation. That's what the retribution is about, for the same thing that the aggressor did to the victim to be done to him. If one attempted to break the arm of the aggressor at the midpoint of his forearm, one cannot replicate the same fracture as the victim's. This is hard to do and cannot be assured because it cannot be controlled. There is no qisas, retribution for broken bones. It is countered in a different way. There is qisas, retribution for popping out one's eye or cutting one's lower lip or upper lip or one's eyelid or one's tongue or one's ear or one's penis or one's testicles or one's labia. These are body parts that can be cut in a controlled way. Injuries of other than the head and face are called jarh. You can say wound. The injuries of the head and face are called shijaj, and they are 11. On the skin. It opens the surface of the skin a little. Number 2, a deeper scratch of the skin where one sees the blood, but without the blood flowing out. Number 3, a cut on the skin that causes the blood to flow out. Number 4, a cut through the skin and the cut of the top part of the flesh. I'm sure there are some scientific terms for this, but so this one is a little bit deeper than just the blood flowing out. I mean, it reaches to a certain depth in the muscle. Number 5, a cut that is deep in the flesh. Number 6, a cut that reaches the thin skin that separates the bone from the flesh. Number 7, a cut that reaches the bone. It exposes the bone, mudiha. It's called mudiha in Arabic. Number 8, it breaks the bone / skull. It could expose the bone or it does not expose the bone. 9, it dislocates the bone even if the bone was not exposed or broken. 10, it reaches the skin / sac that protects the brain. 11, it cuts through the skin / sac surrounding the brain and cuts through the brain. May Allah protect us, Ameen. The qisas, retribution, can only be applied to one of these 11 injuries mentioned above, which is number 7, the mudiha. This is because the limit of this cut reaches the bone and can be replicated. So, the only one out of the 11 where you do retribution for is number 7, which is the mudiha. Because that's the only one that can be replicated. So that concludes the assault. Now we go for the diya, the blood money. And so this is a new chapter. We're just going to go into more details about the blood money. There are 2 types of diya, blood money, a heavy amount and a light amount. The heavy amount is 100 camels in the form of 30 3-year-old female camels that have reached the age of being mated, 30 4-year-old female camels that have lost their front teeth, and 40 pregnant camels. Those 40 pregnant camels are probably very costly. The light amount is 100 camels in the form of 20 3-year-old camels, 3-year-old females that have reached the age of being mated, 20 4-year-old females that have lost their front teeth, 20 2-year-old females, 22-year-old females whose mothers would be nursing, 22-year-old males whose mother would be nursing, and 21-year-old females whose mothers would be pregnant. Still, that sounds like a lot. If there were no camels, then the issue is transferred to their value. It was said that it is transferred to the amount of 1,000 golden coins or 12,000 silver coins. If it were stiffened, then a third of the amount is added. The lightened amount of diya is stiffened in 3 cases. If one killed within the haram borders, and when we say stiffened, it's referring to the mughallaba. So what does that mean? That means if the killing occurred within the haram borders, then his blood money, what he would have to pay, would be stiffened, and it would be heavy, a heavy amount. If one killed within the hurum months, also his diya would be stiffened. And if one killed an unmarriageable, a mahram, blood relative. So if someone kills their aunt, or their brother, someone who's unmarriageable to them, they would have to pay the stiffened blood money, the heavy amount. The diya due for a woman is half of the diya due for a man. The diya due for a Jew or a Christian is a third of the money due for a Muslim. As for the Majusi, it is 2/3 of 1/10 of the diya due for a Muslim. A complete amount of diya for murder is due for amputating both hands, both feet, the nose, both ears, gouging both eyes, amputating the 4 eyelids, the tongue, both lips, and for the loss of speech, loss of sight, loss of hearing, loss of smelling, loss of sanity, amputating the penis or both testicles, for a head or face injury that exposes the bone, or knocking out a tooth, one pays 5 camels. For every so-called useless organ, one must pay a hukuma. Footnote 369. The hukuma is the amount of diya proportional to the percentage of the depreciation of one's value had he been a slave. And it's going to come with the explanation about what that is. This right now is the Matn. We're reading what is above the line. The diya due for a slave is his value. The blood money due for the fetus of a free Muslim is a male or female slave. The blood money due for the fetus of an enslaved Muslim is 1/10 of the value of his mother. Explanation. The diya is the obligatory money that is due for the assault committed on a free Muslim, whether this assault causes death or an injury to an organ, body part, or any of the senses. The heavy amount of diya can be heavy from 3 aspects. It is paid by the aggressor, it must be paid immediately, and the 100 camels are in 3 groups, as with the intentional killing. It can also be heavy from one aspect, which is to pay for the 100 camels that are in 3 groups, as with the killing by mistake in a deliberate way, mistakenly intentional. As for the light amount of diya, it can be light from 3 aspects. It is paid by the aqilah, the agnates, excluding the son and the father. It is deferred for 3 years, and the 100 camels are in 5 groups, as with the purely accidental. It can also be light from 2 aspects. It is paid by the aqilah, agnates, excluding the son and father, and is deferred for 3 years, as with the killing by mistake in a deliberate way, mistaking the intention. So this is going into details now about the diya, and he's going to talk about the heavy amount and the light amount, And some of it has already been mentioned in the details when we talked about killing, but it has its own chapter, so it goes into the details. And then after that chapter would be swearing about murder. And it's called Lawth. Inshallah, we'll cover that.